Mi nombre es Carmen Campos, soy coordinadora de los proyectos de educación y RSC de Fundación Ibercaja. Les damos la bienvenida a esta tercera actividad del ciclo Referentes de Fundación Princesa de Girona. Good afternoon, Maria.
Aurelio.
We are so glad to share with you this conversation about your experience as a referent for other youngsters. We consider it to be very inspiring. Antes de empezar y de presentarles a María, sí que me gustaría, vamos a intentar todos apagar la cámara y apagar los micros para que María pueda hacer su exposición sin ninguna interferencia y sin ninguna incidencia. Así que les animo a que los puedan silenciar en estos primeros minutos. Queremos agradecer en nombre de Fundación Ibercaja la colaboración que tenemos con la Fundación Princesa de Girona, que es para nosotros un auténtico lujo tener este ciclo de referentes de esa fundación a la que nos une un objetivo común, que es trabajar por los jóvenes y por su empleabilidad y por su futuro. Les explico un poquillo. Maria Jammal va a hacer la presentación en inglés. Yo le voy a presentar en inglés, pero antes quiero compartir su currículum con ustedes en español. Cualquier consulta o cualquier pregunta que tengan, tanto a lo largo de la exposición como al final, la pueden hacer a través del chat. Si la quieren hacer en inglés, fenomenal. Si no, yo se las leeré al final. Si la quieren hacer en español, se la traduciremos y ella contestará las preguntas. Sí que me ha dicho que si quiere haber alguna a lo largo de la exposición, pues sin problema ella hará alguna pausa para poder ir respondiéndolas, ¿vale? Sin más, les voy a presentar. La verdad es que es un auténtico placer para nosotros tener a Maria Jammal. Ella ha sido la primera galardonada en la categoría internacional por los premios Fundación Princesa de Girona. Tiene un proyecto precioso dirigido a los refugiados y les hago una pequeña presentación de su extenso currículum que comentábamos antes con ella, que tiene una amplia formación y que le ha llevado a poder implementar este proyecto. María es nacida en Bielorrusia, es hija de padre palestino y de madre rusa. Ha crecido en Haifa, en Israel, donde reside actualmente. Se ha graduado en Derecho y en Psicología, allí en Haifa, y allí es donde después también accedió a un máster que estudió en la Universidad de Washington en Estados Unidos. Tuvo una beca Erasmus Mundus de tiempo completo para estudiar Derecho Europeo y en la Universidad de Bruselas de Virgen, en Bruselas, Bélgica, y después también tuvo una beca Erasmus Mundus y Tomás Burgenthal para estudiar sus estudios completos en Estados Unidos. María es la CEO y activista de una ONG que se llama Humanity Crew. Esta organización fue fundada por ella y es a día de hoy la organización más influyente en salud mental para refugiados y personas en zonas de crisis. Esta organización empezó su trabajo, se creó en 2015, pero sigue funcionando a día de hoy. Maria, welcome again. Maria was born in Belarus to a Palestinian father and a Russian mother, raised in Haifa, Israel, where she held 2 bachelor degrees in law and psychology. After that, she held a master's degree in law with a concentration in intellectual property from the George Washington University in USA. She was recipient of an Erasmus Mundus scholarship for her full-time undergraduate study program in the field of European law of the British University in Brussels, Belgium. Also, she was recipient of an Erasmus Mundus scholarship and Thomas Bergenthal scholarship for her studies in the United States. Nowadays, Maria is CEO and activist who marches Humanity Crew, the organization that founded to become one of the world's most influential mental health organizations for refugees and people in crisis zones. This organization began its first mission in November 2015 and worked continuously until today. And some minutes ago, we have been talking that nowadays she is working in Brazil, Russia, and Turkey. Thank you, Maria. We would like to know your project and especially the motivation that you felt to worry about mental health of refugees. It will be a pleasure to learn from you.
Thank you very much, Carmen, and thank you for the foundation for having me, and for the Princess of Girona Foundation also for making this happen. Welcome everyone and good evening. I would like to share a presentation with you. And in this presentation, I will be presenting the work of Humanity Crew, how we started, why mental health, why is it important, and then I would really love if you have questions to open a discussion. Feel free to ask me about Humanity Crew or about anything else that you feel like talking about in this field, or that you think that I can benefit you with. So I will start by saying that Humanity Crew, as Carmen mentioned, was established in 2015. One day, my partner and I, because of, there was the war in Syria, and we were hearing about all these incidences of the refugees who were dying crossing the sea. We saw a lot of footage in the media, and we were thinking, what can we do? How can we help? And so we decided that we wanted to travel to Greece and to try to see how we can help the refugees that are there. The refugees that arrived to Greece, they came from different areas in the Middle East, mainly from Syria. Some people left, some refugees left from Syria through Lebanon. Many refugees left from Syria to Jordan. Also, Iraqi refugees have fled from Iraq to Jordan and then find their way to Turkey. In Turkey, these refugees would usually contact with smugglers and find their way to cross the sea between, you see here, between Turkey and Greece through Izmir. And they often take boats and reach these small islands that are Greek islands and very close to Turkey. It's a very short distance from Turkey to the Greek islands, but it's a very traumatic experience. The refugees would cross the sea. Sometimes their boats would not get to Greece. You see the big boats that are full of people, too many refugees on one boat. It's too heavy. In many cases, the boat breaks, they drown, and then they needed rescue. We worked very close with the Spanish organization Proactiva Open Arms. We worked very close with them from the beginning when they started working in Lesbos, which is a Greek island. And we joined them and provided support to the refugees that were then reached to the shores. You see here, this is one camp of refugees. There are many camps around Europe. Some are in these situations. Even today, 6 and 7 years after, refugees are still living in tents under a very bad weather. You can find this situation, unfortunately happening in many areas in Europe. And this situation did not stop in 2015 or in 2016. We see it even today. If you look at the numbers here, you see that in 2020, and this is the map of Spain, there are 35,236 refugees that arrived this year alone to Spain from Northern Africa. In Greece this year, there have been 14,700 refugees, and they are still coming. We stopped hearing about it as much in the news now because of COVID and so on, but it's no longer an interest to show it and to talk about it as it was in 2015. But you should know that this is still a problem. The refugees are still fleeing the war, still fleeing countries, still fleeing execution, and they are still coming to Europe, and the numbers are very big. In the world right now, there are almost 80 million forcibly displaced people around the world. So we're talking about every few minutes, we have another person who is internally or forcibly displaced. It can be from a war, it can be from a flood, it can be a displacement in someone's own country, but they're being displaced because of many reasons, either, as I said, war, natural disasters, or other situations. So this is a very big problem, and it has effects everywhere in the world. 14 from all these numbers, I don't want to tell you all of them. I can share this information with you if it's relevant for you later. But some data that you should know that is very interesting and important is that 40% of these refugees are children. This is a very big number and very disturbing number, that 40% of them are children. So we're not only talking about men, or this is how we usually see it in the news, that we hear about men and single men fleeing, but it's 40% children, and there's also about 30% women in these huge numbers. And the refugees are, the biggest number of refugees are hosted in Turkey. There are 3.6 million refugees who are hosted in Turkey. And then we have Colombia, Pakistan, Uganda, and only then Germany. So you see that most of the countries that are hosting the refugees, they are either third world countries or they're not the European countries in most cases. But we started hearing about the refugees when they started crossing to Europe. Before that, it wasn't really a very big issue, but it started to get more and more important and affecting the European policies when it started affecting the Europeans. So this is how it was increased actually in 2015. So how do we fit in? What does a Humanity Crew does? So Humanity Crew's mission is to deliver first response mental health support to victims of disasters. When we were there in 2015, we just went there. We didn't know what we're going to do and how. We just knew that we wanted to help. And there were a lot of organizations, a lot of people volunteering in the beginning, and then organizations who said the same thing. They wanted to come and help, and they just started, you know, giving away blankets, giving food, Proactiva, for example, providing sea rescue. So really very good people were there in the right time, providing support. We were different from other volunteers that were there because we, as Palestinians, also speak Arabic. And we were the only ones who could speak to the refugees in their mother tongue. And in 2015, most of the refugees, about 95%, I think, of the refugees were Syrian and Iraqi. So they all spoke Arabic as mother tongue. So what was unique about us is that we were able to talk to them and understand them and answer the questions and provide them with information. And there were a lot of difficult cases. There was in about from September to the end of 2015, I think there was about, in only a few months, there was about 500,000 refugees that crossed in a very small island. There were a lot of people dying on the way. So there were a lot of people that were affected by it. There were families who lost children, wives who lost their husbands. So they were very, very traumatized and affected when they came to the island. So it was very important to be there for them, to ask them how they were, to provide them not only the physical needs, which are very important, and I'm talking about food and clothes and shelter, but it was also very important to be there for them and to ask them what their mental needs are and to support them because they were alone and they were in a different country. They were in a foreign country. They didn't understand the language. There was no one really to support these needs. So this is how we figure out that this is what we needed to do. We need to focus on mental health. Mental health is something that is not provided immediately in disasters. And we're not talking only about refugees. As I will explain later how we expanded our work. We started with refugees, and there was almost no one providing mental health support. And when I say mental health support, I will explain a little in a bit what exactly that means and how we do it, so you will have a clearer picture. I will show you a small video here. I hope you can hear the audio as well.
Maria, we cannot listen to the video.
Okay, there's the subtitles.
Okay.
Oh, no, sorry, actually part of it is in English, so there are not subtitles for all of it. I'm not sure why they're not, but I can share with you it's a promotional video that explains more about our work and how we started, but I will skip that and then go straight to some other materials. So we said that the problem is big, and the problem is not only for refugees. In any crisis around the world, you have people affected by it, and you have, as a result, people who are traumatized and are mentally affected. So on average, there are 315 disasters per year, whether it is an earthquake, a war, some sort of flood, any disaster. There's almost every day there is some sort of disaster happening somewhere in the world. And these disasters affect more than 68 million people every year. And there's a lot of economic loss as a result as well. So, and what happens when we have this type of disaster? 15 to 20% of people affected by these disasters, of these survivors of these disasters, experience severe psychological distress. So they can have anxiety, depression, substance abuse, social disintegration, post-traumatic stress disorder, and other mental health issues. So it's very important to provide mental health support in these disasters and as soon as possible. Because what happens if you don't provide mental health support? People who are traumatized and people who are depressed and affected by all of this, they cannot return back to work or to their normal life when they are in a safe place. It's very hard for them to do that. It's very hard for them to function in their family. It's very hard for them to go back to school, to get a new education. So they're not functioning well. And this will affect not only them, it will affect their families, it will affect the community, it will affect labor, it will affect the economy. So the effects on of providing mental health is huge. It's not only the well-being of the person, it's also the family and the entire community. So it's very important to put a lot of emphasis on mental health, which does not happen very often today. So the solution and what we do is that we provide mental health in the disaster zones as close as possible. It's very important to be very close to the trauma, not to give mental health, 2 years or 3 years after, when it's very, very hard to treat the trauma. So what we try to do is to prevent the trauma from developing into something that is very severe. So it's very important to do it as soon as possible. I'll give you an example, and it doesn't have to be, a very big disaster or an earthquake. Even if you witness, for example, or if you have a car accident, and this is a traumatic event for you, the sooner you will get support and the sooner you will deal with that accident, the more likely that you will not develop post-traumatic stress disorder and other disorders that are related to that accident. So the sooner it is, the sooner you prevent these trauma from even developing. So how we do that and what we did in Lesbos. We're not talking only about, opening a clinic like a doctor and then having patients coming and talking to us like you usually think a psychologist work. No, we work in many different ways. In ways we support the refugees or the people that are in disaster to give back control, to give them tools how they can move on, how they can live their every day, because they lost everything. They lost their house, they lost their friends, they lost their work, they lost everything that was a support system for them. So what we're trying to do is to give them these powers back. So one of the activities we did, you can see in the photo here, is doing gardening project. And the idea here is that we provide them with the tools. These women here used to be farmers from where they come from, so they know how to work in the land. So for them, giving them these tools and enabling them to do this work and to have a community of people. These women are not from the same family and they're not from the same city and they didn't know each other before, but now that we gave them these tools and activated them, they did everything by themselves. They worked the land, they planted some seeds that are very fast to grow, and it's food that they eventually ate, and they were very, very much enjoying this. When they woke up in the morning, they had something to do, they had something to take care of. So these things and these activities are very important to sustain and to support these women in this case. And this was one of the activities that we did. Other activities that we do is group support. This group support was giving to unaccompanied minors that were in one of the camps we work in Saloniki. We did a phototherapy where we provided cameras to children to document their lives and to tell their own story in their own way. And then we provided them with these photos. We did chess tournaments. One of the guys there that you can see in the photo, he used to play chess very, very well. And he was, sitting in a camp. There was nothing to do. He was very depressed. He was really he didn't have any type of occupation. And when we started talking to him and seeing what he did and what he would like to do and how we can activate him, he said that he would really like to play chess. So we brought him not only one set of a chess table, we brought him a dozen, and we asked him to create a class for the children so that he can teach them. And then they created a tournament, and we had, over 50 participants, and having the entire camp participate, and they even participated with the military that was in the camp. It was very fun activity for them. It really empowered this man that was depressed, had nothing to do. It gave him support and power. It gave him his dignity back. He felt that he can contribute, and it was a very successful project. We also train other organizations on how to work with this type of community of refugees. We always say that it's very important to work through the mentality and not against the mentality of the refugees. And because we come from a very similar mentality and background of the refugees, who again was Syrian and Iraqi in the beginning, these trainings that we did for the other organizations was very, very helpful for them to understand some gestures, what to do and what not to do and how to do it. So it was one part of it. The other part was about how to detect vulnerable cases of mental health. What are the things we need to look at when we're dealing with the communities, and things like that are more related to the mental health aspect, and especially also how to take care of yourself when you are an aid worker working in camps and in areas and in difficult situations like these. We started this work in 2015, as I said, and we continued to do it until today. We started working in Greece, then we expanded to other locations within Greece. We worked in Turkey as well. And when the COVID-19 started at the beginning of the year, we couldn't travel anymore, and we had to shut down some of the locations where we were working. But we continued to work online. A few years ago, we developed our online platform, and the refugees we were working with, when they left the camps, they could continue contacting us. And we have a lot of psychologists here that couldn't go and volunteer, but they volunteered from their house. They gave several hours per week, and they volunteered to talk with refugees, and they provided this online. It was even before the COVID happened. It was 2-3 years ago that we started doing that, and it was very successful back then as well. So when COVID happened, we switched most of our activity online, and we did. And when you look at the pandemic, and this is also considered a disaster that has affected everyone around the world. So we continued working online. We responded to the COVID pandemic. We did sessions and webinars in 8 different languages. We also have a Spanish psychologist working with us, providing this support. We provided also support in Italy, in Korean, in Arabic, in different locations around the world. We did work with HIV patients in Greece, with homeless shelters in Italy, with unaccompanied minors in Italy as well. So we really try to take the most vulnerable communities that were already affected by their situation, and they were even more affected by the COVID, because there was a lack of services, and they were either sleeping outside or either affected by the pandemic, and they didn't have any support to go to. And we're still continuing with this support. Now we work in Greece, in Samos island, and in Lesbos island as well. About 2 months ago, or about a month ago, was our last mission to Samos. And there, you remember the picture of the camp that you saw in the beginning. This is how the camp still is today. And the situation is very, very bad there. And we're continuing to provide support online. There was also, if you heard, there was a very big fire in Moria camp. It's one of the biggest camps, refugee camps in Europe, which is in Lesbos in Greece. And we have a project there that we provide support to the aid workers, the people who work there with the refugees. We also work with aid workers in Brazil who are providing support to the Venezuelan refugees. And we work also in Turkey with refugee populations. As you know, we don't know where this pandemic will take us and how the situation will change, but the refugees are very affected by it, and we will continue to provide services in the field and online as much as we can. So this is in general about Humanity Crew and about what we do. At this point, I would love to hear if you have any specific questions about what I discussed. I would love to hear your thoughts and to answer any questions and to go maybe a little bit deeper on some of the issues if you have any specific questions. Carmen, could you please let me know if there are any questions? I see someone is asking about volunteering. We have all of our work, and we used to have more than 200 volunteers with us. Everything that we did, or most of what we did, was based on volunteers, amazing volunteers that have joined us since we started until today. And they come mostly from Palestine, but also from around the world, Spain, the US, and other locations. Feel free, I will write down an email that you can contact if you would like to volunteer. Right now, it's impossible to volunteer in the field because of COVID and all of these restrictions. But if you feel that you can volunteer with us doing other things for the organization, depending on your experience and your education and your background. So please feel free to contact us and we will be happy to answer you and direct you.
Sorry, Maria, because I had a problem with the micro. There is another question for refugees hosted by different countries. What kind of follow-up do you do? It is possible they will need your support and your advice too in their new life.
Yes, so in many, we try to, the support that we provide is focused on it depends where we contact the refugee. So if the refugee is in Samos, for example, and this is where he received our support, if he later moved to another country or continues to a different place, he can still contact us. In many cases, they don't, because in many cases, they already have resolved their thing and they want to move on. They want to continue with their lives and build their lives, but they can still contact us if they still need support. We also try to connect them with other organizations in the field and have them also rely on themselves and be able to continue by themselves and not only and always rely on Humanity Crew.
Okay, there is another question that is in relation with one that I met you when I had a problem with my micro. How did you start this project? Because I have read about the first time that you decide to do something about mental health with the refugees, and it's very exciting. Can you share with us?
Yes, so as I said in the beginning, I just went there to volunteer, my partner and I, and there we met an amazing friend, and I couldn't go back home. My partner came to visit me. He said, like, we need to go back home. You know, I had to go back to my job. We needed to go back to our house. We couldn't stay there. Also, the visa didn't allow us to stay in Europe. But we felt that we couldn't go back to our normal lives. So I was talking to my partner, and he said, like, if we go back, I will promise you that we will come back stronger and bigger. And there were a lot of people, a lot of my friends asking how, like, I want to go volunteer, how can I go and how can I help? So we went back home. We registered a nonprofit organization. We started raising money from the people around us, from our friends, colleagues, neighbors. We had a lot of amazing volunteers. They helped us a lot in raising donations as well. And this is how we started. And we knew that because of what we experienced, we knew that mental health was very important, and there was no one else doing that, and it has to be as soon as possible. And this is how we decided that this will be our focus, and this is how we started. And then, you know, more and more people believed in us, more and more volunteers came, and we started growing bigger and bigger.
Did you get any money from the government?
No. Most of our donations come from private donors and from family foundations and things like that. We don't have donations from the government.
And how do you think that this situation could be better than now?
Well, it could be, you know, it hit rock bottom, so it couldn't be worse. It's only getting, I hope that it will get better, but we don't see any solutions for the refugees anytime soon. This is the biggest number of refugees that we had since ever. And it's very disturbing that in 2020, this is still the situation, and that this is happening, and this is in Europe. We're talking about Europe. We're not talking about, you know, some place imaginary or history. We're talking about something that is happening right now. And you saw the numbers. This is still continuing, and the situation are living in very bad conditions. And it's not, unfortunately, getting any better at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Teresa is asking, regarding the former or current volunteers, professionals working in the field, what specific programs do you develop when it comes to their mental health?
To the professionals and the volunteers. Well, first of all, before the volunteers come and volunteer with us, they come here to the office, or we have a training online, and we do about a 30-hour training with the volunteers. So the volunteers are ready. They understand where they are going to. You know, when we volunteered in the beginning, we had no idea or expectations, and we came back very, you know, devastated. It was very, very hard for us to deal with what we saw. So it was very important to us not to send anyone before they are prepared, before there is a very specific and clear program, before there are rules on what you can do and what you cannot do, in order also to protect yourself in the beginning and to protect the refugees. So we do a very intensive training. And this training and our volunteers, they're not only psychologists. The idea is that we can teach anyone to provide mental health first response. Mental health first aid. The same way you can teach anyone to provide CPR, I can teach a cab driver and a lawyer and a doctor. They will be sitting in the same room taking the CPR course. So the same way all of them can learn how to do CPR, you can also teach anyone to provide mental health first response. And it's very important, and this is what we try to have in the community, because Anyone can go through trauma, anyone can go through a disaster. We are witnessing it right now with the pandemic. I'm sure that many of you, if not all of you, have seen someone suffering from a severe trauma around you, whether it is in the pandemic or someone, as I said, having an accident or some other trauma in his life. So it's very important to be prepared. And the other thing we provide to these professionals and the volunteer is support when they are back. So we don't leave them when they're back. We provide for them mental health support as they need it, because it's a very difficult experience and it's very important for them to take care of themselves. And also when they are working in the field with us, they also have debriefing sessions and trainings and mental health support from our team here. So we're always with them. We don't leave them alone. It's a very, very difficult situation where they're at, and they need to help themselves in order to be able to help others.
Okay. Elisa wants to ask your opinion about realistic solutions to this big migration crisis that is happening, as it seems to be getting worse and more people keep coming. How do you think the European Union could help and make a difference?
Teresa, I really wish I could or I had an answer to your question. Unfortunately, I don't know what is the right solution or how can it be. It definitely has to be an international solution and not local solution in each country. It cannot be closing down borders. It cannot be on the account of the people. It cannot be on the account of these 40% who are children who are suffering as a result. I don't really know, or I cannot answer you what are the actions that needs to be taken in order to make this better, but I can say that they're not happening right now, and the situation does not seem to be any better.
Okay. And Teresa says, when looking at your presentation, I can see you developed several actions connected with the so-called emergency pedagogy. In this sense, I wonder if you are currently working on similar actions connecting mental health and education. Thanks.
Not sure I understand the question. Can you repeat that, please? Who asked it?
She wants to know if you are currently working on similar actions connecting mental health and education.
Well, the part that we do with education is educating people about mental health in disasters, about mental health first response. And the idea is that if you go through a trauma and you're prepared, you will be more likely to deal with it better. So we call it preparedness. The more ready you are and the more aware you are about the situation and what you can face as a human being, mentally and emotionally, as a result of trauma, the more ready you are and the more likely you will be able to go through this without suffering from severe consequences. We used a lot of, one time we went to a camp. It was in Saloniki. It had more than 4,000 refugees, and about 1,000 of them were children. And we went to a camp. We were a team of, I think, 6 or 7 volunteers, and we didn't know how to gather around all these children because there was a lot of children, and we couldn't find like an activity that will really make them focus, or how can we gather all these people around. So we had a volunteer who's a psychologist and someone who comes from the field of education, and one of the things that we did was to create a school for them. So, and we're talking about a camp which is in the middle of a forest. It's not really a camp. We didn't have any building. So we did like classrooms outside. They took stones, they put them out like circles, and we had class. And we started teaching. We had class of math, class of English, and class of Arabic, class of different things. And in this way, through education, we managed to do activities that will gather these people around, show them, have them responsible, show them discipline, having their parents taking care of them. We had very strict rules of the parents having to bring their children to school, even though it was, 5 meters from their tent, but they had to wake their children up, to clean their faces, to give them food before they come to this so-called school. So we have a lot of, we did have a lot of projects around education. It's a very important tool for general, for people to restore their well-being, to have a system, to have a group. So this is what we did around education. This one, and also educating people about mental health and the importance of mental health in disasters.
Sylvia asks, most of your donors are not European. Is there still a long road to awareness?
I think that in the past few years, there's more and more understanding of the importance of mental health. It is still very far from being where it should be. The funds of the European Union for mental health is not enough. The research about mental health is not enough. Generally mental health, even not in disasters, like if you look at any community, mental health is something that is usually a taboo. This is not funded enough. We always need more mental health generally in the world without any connection to disasters. So in disasters, the situation is much worse. We do see an increase in the importance and in the understanding of mental health, but we still have a long way to go. And it's very important to do these type of, for me, it's very important to do these type of sessions also with you. And this is why I think also the Princess of Girona Foundation Award was very important, because they saw the importance of mental health. They saw that this is a topic that is not talked enough, and they wanted to shed more light on that.
Mm-hmm. Currently, are you doing advocacy work, political management?
Not as much political. We try to do advocacy as much as we could, but we're still, I think, too young and too small to get to where we would like to be, but we try to do it as much as we can. We talk in many conferences around the world. I had a talk in the European Parliament a few years ago about this and about the importance of mental health and how it should be like. So we try to influence in every possible way that we can. It's very important for you also as participants, and if you feel this is a topic that is important for you, please feel free to share this with your friends, to share it with your colleagues. Look out our website, read about it, because it's very important for, it's not us, it's not my organization. We started it because we feel that this is something that is very needed around the world, and the more people understand it, the much more help we have, and the more we can help other people.
Sylvia says, I have read that in some cases offering coffee and drinking it together helps you to get closer to the people who come to the refugee camp, since psychology is not very accepted in some cases.
Right. I have one of our members, a psychologist, his name is Mohammed Mansour. He was with me in Lesbos in 2015. And he came to the camp, and the camp manager was complaining that the men are very aggressive and we cannot talk to them. We don't know what to do with them. We don't know how to talk to them. They're not responding to us. So one day I saw him bringing a pot of Arabic coffee, And if you know the Arabic coffee, it has a very strong aroma to it. So when you're holding a pot of coffee, the entire camp would smell like coffee. And then he sat down on the bench, and then the men started joining him, and they made a circle and they started talking. And from small coffee, it became a support group. Without them knowing, this is like, he's a psychologist, and without them knowing they're going into this type of session, they started talking, they started opening things, and this is what and why the culture is very important, because we understand that coffee, for example, in the culture of these refugees is very important. It's something that they drink together as group of men. It's something that takes them back, you know, the smell and the taste, it takes them back to their home. It brings a lot of good memories. It makes them feel safe. It makes them feel that they can now be together and talk. So this is why it's very important to be very culturally sensitive when you're working with refugees or with anyone.
Ingrid says, you say that budget is provided on contributions from private organizations. What does the government say when you have to request your help?
What does the government said about what? Sorry?
When you have requested their help.
Well, we haven't really requested the government's help. You know, when we started, I've been an activist for my entire life, but I've never, and I'm in the board of several different nonprofit organizations, but I have never myself fundraised for an organization. So it was very new for me when I started. But I found great people who supported the idea, and they started believing in our cause and donating money to us. And this is how we started, by small donations from really like a lot of people around us with small donations. And this is what kept us in the beginning. And then we started applying for funds, but we never applied to government organization. I think it's also a policy issue, because we are a non-profit, not political, not religious organization. So, and we want to keep it this way. And when you involve the government, you need to pick a side with that government. So this has been an issue for us as well.
Mm-hmm. Elisa says that she was a volunteer in a refugee camp in Greece 2 years ago and could see how women barely came outside to take part in our activities. Have you noticed more difficulties to get to women? How did you manage those situations?
This is very correct. And unfortunately, this is the situation in many places, not only in Greece, because in many areas, women don't feel safe leaving the tents. In Samos, for example, where we work, the camp is very, very dark. It's secluded from the city. It's very far. So only young men usually are the ones who are able to go out, and women don't feel safe leaving their tents. What we try to do is create safe spaces for women. So we would gather them in one women's tent, or if it's a bigger camp and they have centers, there's usually a safe space for women where they can gather and do these activities from there. It's very important to create these safe spaces for the children and women, especially in the camps that you saw in the first picture I shared. It's just tents in the middle of nowhere. You have no light, you don't have nothing. So the access is very, very difficult especially for women and children.
Okay, there is another person who says, could you tell us some singular and lovely situation?
Yes, there are actually a lot of like lovely situations that I faced. One of the stories I think that influenced me personally the most was In the first few days when I arrived, there was a shipwreck, a boat that drowned, and this woman lost her husband and child, and she was left with 2 other kids. We supported her in Lesbos. We continued supporting her through our online clinic, and she ended up in Germany. And this woman, after a few months, sent us a message, and in one of her messages, she said that, Maria, I am now strong enough, and I feel that I want to come and volunteer with you and help you like you helped me. Now, this sentence, this saying, and this is a woman that is very, very young. She lives in a foreign country that she doesn't know, that she doesn't understand the language of. She's with 2 kids, and she wants to leave everything and come and volunteer with us. So for me, it was a successful story. It was a story of a woman who managed to go through her own trauma. It's a very nice story for me always that I think about when I think of the importance, like what does it mean to be there in the right time, in the right place, and give the small support that we can provide, and where this woman end up being in the end.
Well, you have different congratulations and thanks. We are going to finish now the explanation and the questions. Thank you so much, Maria, because you have made a short exhibitions and you have kept so much time for so many questions. It has been a pleasure to know your project and to know your experience and how Luis is writing now. You are really inspiring. And if I had to share one of your most inspiring sentences, I have written that you work through the mentally and not against the mentally with refugees. That is very important to work since the respect and since the care of the mental and the mentality of everybody. Thank you so much, Maria.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me, and thank you everyone for being here and listening for an hour. And if I may add just a few sentences, I wrote down our email again. Please feel free to contact us if you have any questions or suggestions or ideas. And I do encourage you, each and every one of you, to really follow your passion. You can all do something to make this community and your population and this world a better place. I come from a different educational background, and I left what I was doing to do this. So keep an open mind, stay positive, stay influenced, and you can really reach anything you would like. And that's it. Best of wishes for everyone. And I wish that this time during the pandemic is also something you can go through positively and think of the positive things that happen to you in between.
I invite you to read the chat because they are writing very nice things like you're changing the world little by little. Thank you very much for your work and for sharing it with us, and you're right. And it has been a pleasure for sure. It's very interesting, your work, your NGO, but also your experience, because you are a very brave woman. Muchísimas gracias a todos los que nos habéis seguido. Muchísimas gracias por el respeto que habéis demostrado y por haber participado con tantísimas preguntas para María. La verdad es que era un lujo para nosotros cuando la conocimos el año pasado en Fundación Princesa de Girona. Nos apetecía muchísimo que, bueno, pues que se conociese su experiencia porque nos parecía inspiradora y realmente espero que no les haya decepcionado y que la hayan disfrutado. Les emplazo a la siguiente conferencia que tendremos de este ciclo de referentes de Fundación Princesa de Girona. Ya será en enero del 21, el 21 de enero, y tendremos a Javier Agüera con la conferencia Cómo prevenir la resaca digital antes de salir al mundo real. Muchísimas gracias por acompañarnos, así que les veremos el año que viene. And thank you so much, Maria. Thank you, Princess of Girona Foundation. I hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
En Fundación Ibercaja estamos comprometidos con tu futuro. Comprometidos con los que emprendéis vuestro propio camino. Con las empresas, con los que generáis progreso. Favoreciendo todas vuestras capacidades, vuestra empleabilidad o vuestros proyectos. Cada año ayudamos a más de 1 millón de personas a crear un futuro lleno de oportunidades. Un futuro alineado con los Objetivos de Desarrollo Sostenible. Fundación Ibercaja. Tu futuro, nuestro presente.